Maya adjusted the strap of her sleek leather bag as she stepped into the upscale restaurant. The polished floors gleamed under the warm, ambient lighting, and the quiet hum of conversations filled the air. She glanced around, spotting clusters of well-dressed patrons seated at elegantly set tables. The atmosphere exuded sophistication. She walked confidently toward the reception desk, her heels clicking softly against the floor. A middle-aged man in a tailored suit stood behind the desk, his posture rigid, his expression unreadable. His name tag read Greg. Maya offered him a polite smile. "Good afternoon," she began. "I have a reservation under Maya Grant for 1 o'clock. Greg barely glanced at her before flipping through the reservation book. His eyes skimmed over the pages, but the dismissive twist of his lips was unmistakable. "I don't see your name here," he said flatly. Maya furrowed her brow. "That's odd. I made the reservation 2 days ago. Could you check again, please?" Greg sighed, his tone laced with impatience. "I'm telling you, there's nothing here. And we're fully booked, so I suggest you try somewhere else." Maya glanced behind him at the dining area. Several tables were visibly empty, their crisp white linens untouched. She gestured toward them. "It looks like you have availability." Greg's lips pressed into a thin line. "Those are reserved." "For walk-ins?" Maya asked, her tone even. "No," he snapped, his eyes narrowing. "For people who actually belong here." The words hung in the air, heavy and unmistakable. Maya's stomach tightened, but she kept her composure. Years of navigating subtle and overt discrimination had taught her the value of remaining calm in moments like this. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice steady. "Could you clarify what you mean by that?" Greg smirked, leaning slightly forward. "You know exactly what I mean." A few diners glanced over, their murmured conversations tapering off as they watched the interaction. Maya felt the weight of their stares but refused to let it deter her. She squared her shoulders, meeting Greg's gaze head-on. "I made a reservation, and I'd like to be seated," she said firmly. Greg crossed his arms. "And I already told you we're full. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual customers to attend to." Maya clenched her jaw. The humiliation threatened to bubble over, but she forced it down, replacing it with resolve. She had no intention of letting this man belittle her without consequences. Taking a deep breath, she reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. She opened the camera app and began recording, her hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Could you repeat that?" she asked, her voice unwavering. Greg's eyes flicked to the phone, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. But it was brief. He straightened, his sneer returning. "Go ahead, film all you want. It doesn't change the fact that we're not seating you." The tension in the room was palpable, but Maya remained composed. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Maya held her phone steady, her calm demeanor unwavering as she pressed Greg further. "So, just to clarify for the recording, you're refusing to seat me despite my confirmed reservation and visible empty tables?" Greg scoffed, his arrogance amplified by the attention they were drawing. "I don't have to explain myself to you. This isn't your kind of place. Maybe you'd be more comfortable somewhere casual." A murmur rippled through the nearby patrons. Some shifted awkwardly in their seats, while others leaned in, visibly intrigued. Maya didn't flinch, her voice cutting through the tension. "Casual? And what exactly do you mean by that?" Greg folded his arms, his smirk growing. "I think you know." Maya's pulse quickened, but she kept her tone measured. "Well, now it's on record. Thank you for clarifying your stance." She lowered her phone slightly but kept it recording. "I'd like to speak to the owner or someone in charge. Is that possible?" Greg laughed, a harsh, dismissive sound. You're looking at him. Now, I suggest you leave before I call security. Maya tilted her head, her expression unreadable. Interesting, because the person I spoke with when making the reservation didn't mention you. Perhaps I'll give them a call. Greg's demeanor faltered for a split second before he waved her off. Go ahead. Waste your time. They won't care. Without another word, Maya stepped aside, pulling her phone closer to her ear. She dialed a number quickly, her movements sufficient. Hi, this is Maya Grant, she said when the call connected. Her voice carried authority, but it was calm and deliberate. I'm at your restaurant right now, and I'm experiencing a rather troubling situation. Greg rolled his eyes, leaning against the desk as if the entire scene bored him. You really think someone's going to rush down here for you? He muttered loud enough for her to hear. Maya ignored him, her focus on the conversation. Yes, the manager, Greg, has refused to honor my reservation and implied I don't belong here. I have the interaction recorded. Just so you're aware. Her voice remained level, but the words carried weight. Several patrons exchanged glances, and a couple whispered to each other, clearly uncomfortable with what they were witnessing. She ended the call and slipped her phone back into her bag. Greg raised an eyebrow, his smirk firmly in place. Done with your little stunt? Maya looked at him, her expression calm but unyielding. You'll see soon enough. Greg waved dismissively. Sure. I'll be here when your imaginary backup arrives. Maya didn't reply, her posture composed as she moved to the side. She refused to give him the satisfaction of a reaction, but inside, she was resolute. She wasn't leaving, and Greg would soon learn the cost of his arrogance. The restaurant buzzed softly around them, but a sense of anticipation hung in the air. People were watching closely now, their curiosity piqued, as Maya prepared for what would come next. The sound of an engine idling outside the restaurant drew attention, but Maya remained still, her face calm and confident. Greg, however, barely noticed, still leaning against the reception desk with an air of smugness. He glanced at her every so often, his smirk unwavering, as though her presence were a minor inconvenience he could dismiss at will. The front door opened, and the faint jingle of the bell turned heads. A man and woman entered, both impeccably dressed, their demeanor radiating authority. They scanned the room briefly before their eyes settled on Maya. Their expressions shifted instantly to warmth and recognition. Maya, the man greeted, his voice carrying easily across the room. He approached with an extended hand, his smile genuine. I'm so sorry we're late. Traffic was a nightmare. Greg straightened abruptly, his smirk evaporating. He stared at the pair, confusion flickering across his face as Maya rose to greet them. The woman beside the man stepped forward, her handshake firm as she said, It's good to see you again, Maya. I hope everything's been smooth here. Maya's smile was polite, but her voice carried a pointed edge. Not quite. I've had an interesting experience while waiting. The man turned to Greg, his brow furrowing. Is there an issue? Greg stammered, his previous arrogance replaced with visible unease. No, not at all. Just a misunderstanding. Maya tilted her head slightly. A misunderstanding? You mean when you refused to seat me, ignored my reservation, and implied I didn't belong here? Her tone was measured, but each word struck with precision. The man's expression darkened. Is that true? Greg's mouth opened and closed as he struggled to find words. I didn't realize she was with you. That's irrelevant. The woman cut in sharply, her voice firm. She turned to Maya. Can you show us what happened? Maya nodded and retrieved her phone. She played the video, the sound of Greg's dismissive remarks echoing in the quiet restaurant. The patrons watched intently, their expressions ranging from discomfort to outright disapproval. When the video ended, the man exhaled slowly, his jaw tight. He turned back to Greg, who was visibly sweating now. You realize who this is, don't you? Greg blinked, his confusion clear. I thought she was just... She's one of our largest investors. The man interrupted, his tone cold. And you treated her like this? The woman shook her head, her disappointment evident. We trusted you to manage this restaurant professionally, to uphold the standards we set. Instead, you've embarrassed yourself and us. Greg's face went pale. I didn't mean... You've done enough, the man said sharply. Clear out your things. You're done here. The room fell silent as the weight of the words sank in. Greg's eyes darted around, but there was no sympathy to be found. He mumbled an apology under his breath and hurried away, his shoulders hunched. The woman turned back to Maya, her expression softening. We're deeply sorry for what happened. This is unacceptable, and we'll make sure it never happens again. Maya nodded, her composure intact. Thank you. I appreciate your swift action. The man gestured toward the dining area. Please allow us to personally ensure you're taken care of. It's the least we can do. Maya accepted their offer graciously, but her mind lingered on the moments leading up to this. Justice had been served, but the underlying issue remained. Still, she had made her point, and Greg's actions had consequences he wouldn't soon forget. Maya sat at her table, the remnants of her meal neatly cleared by the attentive staff. The restaurant had shifted back to its usual rhythm, but a subtle undercurrent lingered, whispers and sidelong glances from the other patrons who had witnessed the scene. She noticed the servers moving more quickly, their focus on ensuring her experience was impeccable. It was almost ironic how much care they now showed, a stark contrast to the hostility she faced earlier. The man and woman who had intervened checked in periodically, their apologies genuine each time. They offered her complimentary desserts, drinks, and assurances that changes would be made. Maya thanked them politely, but in truth, she wasn't looking for favors. Her focus remained on the principle of what had happened and the broader implications it carried. As she sipped her coffee, she reflected on the encounter. Greg's behavior wasn't shocking. She had encountered similar attitudes before, but it still left a bitter taste. It wasn't just about her. It was about every person who had faced the same dismissal, the same quiet humiliation, and chose to leave silently rather than fight back. Today, she hadn't been silent, and that mattered. The restaurant door opened, and a young black woman entered. She hesitated at the reception desk, her posture tentative. Maya watched as a different staff member greeted her warmly and led her to a table without hesitation. The sight brought a small sense of satisfaction. Even a small shift in behavior could ripple outward. Before leaving, the woman who had assisted earlier approached once more, lowering her voice. Maya, I want you to know we're taking immediate steps to address this. Training, policies, whatever it takes to ensure no one else is treated like that here. Maya met her gaze, appreciating the sincerity. That's good to hear. It's not just about what happened to me. It's about creating a culture where everyone is treated with respect. The woman nodded, looking both relieved and inspired. You've set an example. Thank you for not walking away. As Maya gathered her things, a few patrons approached her, their expressions a mix of admiration and embarrassment. One older man spoke first, his voice tinged with regret. I saw what happened earlier. I should have said something. You handled it with so much grace. A younger couple chimed in, offering similar sentiments. Maya accepted their words kindly, though she couldn't help but wonder why it took someone standing up publicly for others to feel compelled to speak. Outside the restaurant, the crisp air greeted her. Maya paused for a moment, the weight of the day settling over her. She thought about the countless others who didn't have her resources, her confidence, or the platform to challenge discrimination. Her actions had made a statement, but there was still so much work to be done. Pulling out her phone, she composed a quick note to herself. Speak louder, amplify others, keep pushing. It wasn't just about her fight. it was about changing the system. With a deep breath, she walked away, resolute and ready for whatever came next.